Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/EntitledPeople for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions at the end, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Traditional GER sign. Coworker told HR I was being exclusive for not inviting her to my wedding. This was honestly one of the weirdest work things I've ever dealt with. There's a woman in my office I'm friendly with, but not close to. We've had small talk here and there, nothing deep. No lunches together, no real outside of work connection. She found out I was getting married and asked when the wedding was. She then straight up asked if she was invited. I kind of laughed and said, "Oh, no, it's really small, just close friends and family." I didn't think anything of it. She got quiet and a little cold after that, but I figured, okay, maybe an awkward moment, whatever. Fast forward a few days later, I get a meeting invite from HR. Turns out she filed a complaint saying I was being exclusive and creating a hostile work environment by leaving people out. Because I didn't invite her to my wedding that I'm paying for, that isn't even work related. So I had to sit in this HR meeting and explain that I'm not required to invite coworkers I barely know to my literal wedding, that it's a personal event, that it has nothing to do with work or who's in the office. HR honestly looked just as confused as I was. They basically said, yeah, okay, thanks, and closed the case. But now she acts super passive-aggressive towards me. Like side eyes, little digs when I walk by, still bringing it up in these weird sarcastic comments, like, some people are so inclusive these days. I can't believe she actually thought HR could, make me invite her? Some people really do think they're the main character. So initially it crossed my mind that maybe if this kind of behavior continues, that OP could go to HR and file an actual hostile workplace environment report. But in the process of doing so, I actually decided to Google what makes a hostile workplace hostile. And it requires an actual level of harassment or discrimination or, well, it needs to be more than just mean and snide comments being made your direction. It needs to enter the area of abusive language that's offensive, intimidating, or just downright harassment. So the coworker's description of creating a hostile workplace environment was just definitely not where it needed to be. But also, you can't really do much about her being a weaselly little jerk because she's not quite harassing you yet. But the moment that it enters that level of harassment and she's holding on to this grudge for that long, then you should go to HR and report this. In the meantime, just ignore her and don't give her the time of day, because if she's really going to get this flustered and this upset because she's not invited to your private wedding when you don't know her to the same extent as close friends and family, then just ignore her and don't give her the time of day. Control Consciousness 6942. Entitled woman parked on my driveway and went to work. Looked at the window one morning to see a random woman parked on my driveway. For context, my parking spot fits 2 cars. But my partner usually parks there, or my parents when they come over. The first day, I thought I'd give her the benefit of the doubt, as wasn't sure if she was mistaken. She looked up from scrolling on her phone to give me a filthy look, as if to say, "Why are you staring at me?" And then made a gesture with her hand to say she's leaving. She sat for a further 5 minutes on her phone, then left. The next morning, I see the car parked there again, and she's nowhere to be seen. I left a note on her windscreen asking her not to park there. After a few hours of checking out the window to see if she's come back yet, she eventually arrives with a grin on her face. I ask if she works around the area and told her it's my driveway and she can't park there. To my surprise, she says, "I know it is, and I'm using it." I said, "You can't park there. I need it. It's my space." She said, "Well, I work around the corner and there's no parking, so I go here." I pointed to the various spots I could see, and she said she won't park there again. She ripped up my note, threw it in the drain, and then proceeded to sit on the dropped curb, giving me filthy looks before finally driving off. I'm not sure if she's going to come back, but I assume she will try to. I've been parking diagonally to stop her accessing it. So, as I'm sure many of you probably have this thought, why not just have her towed? Well, unfortunately, OP's in the UK, so rules are a bit different there. And this can be found in this comment section here. View bathroom 4245 comments, "Can you have her car towed?" OP responds, "I'm in the UK, so we're limited with what we can do. Unless you get a court order, it's unlikely to have them moved, unfortunately." Top ad 7154 comments, do what you need to do to stop her using it, including reporting her to a company and leaving them shitty reviews based on her behavior. Get a doorbell camera to record it and be sure to tell them to have a word with her or it goes viral and their business tanks. OP responds, love this idea. I saw her work logo too, so I'll definitely do this if she comes back. I wasn't aware that you needed a court order to get a car towed in the UK. That seems a bit counterintuitive. Honestly though, probably the best way that you can get back at her if she keeps doing this is, park your car behind hers. Lock her in. It doesn't damage your car, and it was her choice to park on your property. And if it is that hard to get a car towed in the UK, then, well, what's she gonna do? Tow your car off of your property? Hell, if you're living in some kind of district where workplaces are nearby, then, go out for a drink. Go to a restaurant, or maybe go to bed early. Not your fault that she decided to park on your property. Inconvenience the hell out of her. And, use that to teach her a lesson. I'd be curious if that option is actually viable in the UK. Ararins. Entitled guest wants to open my collector doll for her kid. I moved out of my parents' house last year. My parents have kept my childhood bedroom as it is, with all of my old toys, belongings, my clothes, etc., because I go home to visit most weekends and help around the house. This includes some collector edition Barbies and dolls that my dad bought for me when I was younger. I keep them in their boxes, stored on a high shelf. There's about 10 dolls, some of which are collector's items now because of their age and condition. I haven't thought about selling them because I just like keeping things my dad bought for me. I guess I have an attachment to them because he worked in the US while we lived in Canada without him, and toys were given when he visited us. This past weekend, I was visiting my mom, and she brought some of her friends over. One particularly entitled friend, Jane, brought her granddaughter, a 5-year-old. I told my mom not to let the child up in my room after a bad experience with kids taking my belongings and breaking them. I stayed downstairs and worked in a room. Eventually, I heard Jane taking the granddaughter upstairs. I then heard them opening doors and talking. I didn't go upstairs until I heard her say something about dolls. I went upstairs and asked them both to leave my room, but Jane was already in my closet at this point and pointing at the dolls. Of course, they pointed at the boxes of Barbies. She pulled one off, showed it to her granddaughter, and told me she wanted to play with it. When I told her, no, it's in the box for a reason, she seemed irritated at me and handed the box back to me. She left my room, and the child started crying and saying she wanted to play with dolls. I went through my things, found some of the dolls that I'd opened as a kid and played with, and offered them to her downstairs. But she kept insisting on the princess doll. They didn't go back upstairs, but it left me a little anxious now about my room. My mom is telling me to put a lock on my door because Jane visits often and tends to wander around, but I'm baffled that she would go into someone's house and think it's okay to touch their stuff. I'm from a South Asian background, by the way, and this tends to be the attitude of some older women. They don't understand collectible culture or sentimentality to gifts. They think they're able to do whatever they want, open whatever they want. Edit for extra info, we installed the lock this morning on my bedroom door, and my mom warned her friend not to go in my room in the future. I live in a very small condo. It isn't big enough for me to bring all my belongings there. I've left a lot of clothing and personal items with my parents. It's very lucky that OP was there during this incident, because if that wasn't the case, that could have gone really poorly, and it could have ended with them coming home to find out that most of their collection had been, opened up, unboxed, and ruined, pretty much. I think collectible culture doesn't really quite jive well with a lot of older generations where they just see it as being toys, so, there's no intrinsic value to it. So, may as well open it up and have it be played with. It is curious, though, that baseball cards do oftentimes get seen as having intrinsic value to some of the older generations. I don't know. A lock, though, definitely the right choice for this, because now you at least have the peace of mind that you won't have to worry about Jane and her granddaughter coming up and possibly causing havoc when you're not there to stop them. One of my biggest fears in the future, because I'm beginning to paint Warhammer miniatures, is ending up in a position where I have them on display, and family comes over, and the little ones are going about, they see a bunch of really cool big mecha toys in the display cases, and I come home to a bunch of Imperial Knights in pieces on the floor. But that's a concern for the future, because that's going to be a long way out. Go Goddess 1970. Potential client expects us to go to court for her after free estimate. My husband and I own and operate a small contracting business, drainage work, etc. Our estimates are always free. We do not have employees and do all the work ourselves. This is all information we give prospective customers when they call us. Earlier this spring, a woman called us who had been referred to us by an acquaintance of ours. She was having some drainage issues that she thought was caused by a neighbor installing a concrete parking area. We told her we'd be happy to come take a look and give her an estimate. We show up, spent a lot of time walking around, measuring, planning, etc. All the while, she was railing on her neighbor and talking non-stop about the lawsuit she'd filed against him. She told us her attorney had advised her to get some written quotes on how much it would cost to solve her drainage problems. Fine, we always provide written quotes on our letterhead. Of note, I was limping heavily, having recently broken some bones in my foot. I mentioned needing to sit soon because of it, and she asked some questions about it. I told her I was scheduled for surgery on X date to have things fixed. I sent her the quote the next day. Over the next few days, she sent several "how much would this be?" emails for things that bordered on crazy. Even though it took me a lot of time in figuring for these extras, I happily obliged, as I always do. Fast forward 2 months. It was 3 days after my surgery, and we hadn't heard any more from her since the initial quote. We got a notification in the mail that my husband needs to come to the post office and picked up a restricted letter from an attorney. He had to take time out from doing absolutely everything around the house and in our business. I was completely non-weight-bearing to go pick the letter up. It was a subpoena and a check for $35. Rather than call and ask us if we would testify about the drainage problems, she had her attorney subpoena us to be in court for 2 days. The $35 was state-mandated minimum compensation for 2 days in court plus mileage. I was in pain and I was in no mood. I called her and, as politely as I could, asked, "What the fuck?" She said she didn't know her attorney was going to subpoena us. I told her we would effectively have to close our business for 2 days to honor the subpoena. She had subpoenaed the wrong person anyway, since it was me who puts the estimates together, and I couldn't sit in court even if I wanted to because I had to keep my foot elevated and couldn't even drive since it was my right foot. She said I'd have to talk to her attorney. So I left a voicemail for the attorney and sent an email explaining the situation. After a few days of not hearing from the attorney, I called the formerly potential client back and told her she needed to intervene. Quote, "I have no control over what my attorney does," end quote. I told her, "You absolutely have control over what your attorney does." Afterwards, I sent another email to the attorney telling her we had nothing to contribute. We had revoked the estimate, and even if we did have something to contribute, she had subpoenaed the wrong person and I was physically unable to sit in court for 2 days. Furthermore, asking us to close our business and sit in court for 2 days for $35 would be a financial burden. The attorney finally responded to my email a week later, a few days before the court date, and asked when a good time would be to meet with me, to go over what I would say in court. It wasn't my proudest moment when I responded with, "Do you have some sort of reading comprehension problem?" She finally released the subpoena after I told her she really didn't want the jury to hear what I had to say about the ridiculous lawsuit. Also, the neighbor had a counterclaim for defamation and her client wouldn't shut up about the nefarious doings of her neighbor while we were looking at her property. I told her if opposing counsel asked, I'd be honest about that. Out of curiosity, I looked at the court records after the trial date had passed. Of course, she lost her case. It made me smile when I saw that her neighbor had won their counterclaim for defamation. Too long didn't read. Potential client expected us to close our business and sit in court for 2 days at witnesses for her frivolous lawsuit against her neighbor after we provided her a free estimate. Sloppy meat hole. Comments. As a lawyer, I think I know what happened. They needed an expert witness to go forward with their case. They didn't want to pay for one, so they tried to use your free quote as an expert witness report. But you can't go to trial on a report. You need testimony. Generally, hiring an expert in any field is very expensive. Also, in most cases, the client is responsible for paying for one. The lawyer doesn't do it. So, the lawyer may have thought that his client retained you as an expert. The client might have lied to the lawyer and said they did, when they really didn't. Regardless, the lawyer is also to blame for not knowing what was going on and not responding. In the future, I would be more careful with who you're so nice to. If someone is talking about lawsuits and clearly not serious about hiring you, tell them you'll only keep answering questions as a consultant at an hourly rate of $500, assuming you even want to do that. Best of luck! Obi responds, "Thank you for that advice. We also build fences. Generally, when people start talking about wanting fences because they're feuding with their neighbor, we start looking for an excuse not to even quote the job. We just don't want that hassle. Since this woman was referred by an acquaintance, we went ahead with the estimate. The attorney did tell me that she told her client to get estimates and tell people they'd have to come to court, contrary to what the client told us. I saw in the court records that they'd subpoenaed a few other contractors. I'm not sure if those poor bastards got out of it or not. So, be careful who you're planning to subpoena for court, because it could backfire really quick, as what the client Obel saw happen to them. From experience here, definitely be careful for who you're adding to your lawsuit, because you never know what the person might actually be ready to say. Posted by Funny Bunny Sunny. My neighbor actually complained about my kids playing outside at 10 a.m. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where kids usually play outside during the day. My kids are 7 and 9. And every morning around 10 a.m., they go out to play in our front yard, running around, laughing, doing normal kid stuff. My neighbor, who apparently thinks 10 a.m. is some kind of ungodly hour to let kids be kids, she stormed over to my house the other day, full-on Karen mode, and started complaining that my kids were making too much noise and disrupting her peace at 10 a.m., when birds are chirping and the sun is shining. She even said she had trouble concentrating on her work because of the racket. Meanwhile, I can hear her vacuuming and blasting her TV through the walls, but hey, sure, my innocent kids are the problem. I tried to explain to her that kids playing outside is literally part of living in a neighborhood, and that 10 a.m. is not some kind of forbidden time for joy and laughter. She just scoffed and walked away like I was the unreasonable one. Are we seriously going to let entitled neighbors police the sound of children playing? What's next, banning laughter? Too long didn't read, neighbor complained about my kids playing outside at 10 a.m., claiming it's too noisy. Meanwhile, she makes more noise herself. Entitled much? This is just a situation where, for now, just leave it be, because, she's just gonna continue to complain, and the most she can do is maybe try getting the cops or something involved, but what are the cops gonna do? Arrest your kids for being outside and playing at 10 a.m.? I would say just keep her at arm's length and definitely just keep an eye on it, but there's not really much to do as long as she's not being malicious and just complaining. I would say avoid escalating until she gives you a reason to escalate things. But for those of you who are listening, what would you do to potentially escalate things? Or even how would you handle a situation like this if apparently now it's illegal to have your kids playing outside at 10 a.m.? I do love the hypocrisy of, older generations complaining that kids aren't outside these days, but the moment they step foot outside, it's, "You're being too loud, go back inside." Neo1881, a friend who was a traveling nurse, asked if she could come stay with us for 3 months, with lots of extras. My wife and I used to live in Hawaii and had a house on the Big Island. One day, I got a call from a friend, Lana, who used to live in Oahu, but then moved to San Diego. She called me, saying that she was now a traveling nurse and had to make a decision ASAP about whether to take a job on the Big Island or on the East Coast. She needed to make a decision within 30 minutes, and it was for 3 months, and wanted to know if she could stay with us and pay rent for that time. I asked my wife, and she said fine. It'll be good to see Lana again. I called her back and said it would be fine for her to stay with us for that time. Then she tells me, "Oh, by the way, my boyfriend will be coming with me too. And also, I'll need a car too because I can't afford to rent a car because I have a $500 a month car payment here in California." That was a bit of a shock given we had agreed to her staying with us alone, and now there would be 2 of them. She also asked if we drank coffee, and we did, so she told us she made a 12-cup pot every day. She ended up going through all our coffee in about a week after she arrived, and Kona coffee was about $18 a pound. So Lana and her boyfriend arrived, and he seemed nice and grateful. Then, a new wrinkle was that since she would be doing a 12-hour shift, so her boyfriend would have to drive her to work and then get her afterwards, making 2 trips every day. I figured out that it was 60 miles one way from our home to the hospital she worked at, which meant 120 miles round trip and 240 miles each day with 2 trips down there. She'd be putting at least 960 miles a week on our car. Then she added that her boyfriend would go fishing during her shift and stay in town, but then also wanted to know where we could get some pot because her boyfriend liked to smoke pot while he went fishing. That was too much to ask, knowing that her boyfriend would take our car, drive it around town, and be stoned part of the time. We started arguing about it, and after about a week, she found another place to rent, closer to work, and I said that giving her a free car to drive around in was too much to ask. She finally agreed to rent her own car and went no contact with us, and we called her about when she would return our car. She also complained that the Honda Accord we loaned her did not have the AC working. Well, she eventually returned the car but never informed us when. Just a final text message that, "It's in your driveway." Never paid us a penny for her first week stay in our home. Talk about entitled friends. Update, and the second day they were in her home, she asked, "What is the nudity policy in your home?" She wanted to prance around nude. Nobody have ever asked us that question before, so I did not have a ready answer. LOL. Comment from Mad Peachy Pie. The minute she brought up her boyfriend, the answer should have been no. No, you can't bring your unemployed boyfriend. No, you can't use our car. No, you can't eat all of our groceries. Traveling nurses get paid a buttload of money, so none of this was necessary. I'm sorry, I have to ask, what is wrong with you? Blackbird 24601. Plus, they get a living stipend near the hospital. Y'all are being scammed. It sucks because OP just wanted to be a good friend. They just wanted to give them some amenities so that way they were going to be safe when traveling for their work. And they took advantage of that. They purposely didn't give the full details because it would have been a much easier no if they had started with, "Hey, can my boyfriend and I live with you for 3 months and use your car while I'm traveling for work?" The answer would have been a much easier, "No, you should probably go work on the East Coast instead." Thankfully, OP didn't put up with this for the entirety of the stay that they were going to have, and actually ended up going no contact with them, as they should. Because this is not how friends act. This is just someone who's a user. I sold a VX. Entitled mother-in-law thinks she can call me Barren and still stay in my house. My mother-in-law came to visit recently, and from the second she arrived, she acted like she was checking into a 5-star hotel, and I was the unpaid staff. I, 34 female, have been married to my husband, 36 male, for 5 years. We don't have kids yet, it's a sensitive topic, and not something I talk about lightly. Anyway, mother-in-law expected me to serve her every meal, clean up after her constant kitchen messes, and get this, even do her laundry. I tried to stay civil for the sake of peace, but it was getting harder by the hour. The final straw? I was doing my laundry when she came in, dropped her dirty clothes next to mine like I was her maid, and left without saying a word. I ignored it and finished my stuff. Later, I politely told her the machine was free now if she wanted to use it. Her response? "Aren't you supposed to help me? After all, a barren lady should at least be humble." I froze. That comment hit me in the gut. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I calmly went to her room, packed up her stuff, dropped in the living room, and told her to leave. Unfortunately, the story ends here, so we don't get the satisfying conclusion or even a meltdown of what happened after that. But yeah, this is a justified response. If that's the kind of language they're going to use and the insults they're going to hurl, then perhaps they can find an actual 5-star hotel. OP already put up with mother-in-law's shit long enough and treated them with far more grace than they deserved. So, yeah, I'm just more curious as to what the husband's reaction would have been, but unfortunately we'll never know. Throw RA evil twin. Am I being entitled? Mom neglected me my whole life and still won't help after reconciling. Hey guys, I really need to know if I'm being entitled here. For context, I'm 29 now and recently moved away from my hometown for the first time. My mom was abusive and neglectful growing up. She was an alcoholic and would lock us in our bedrooms while she drank and smoked in the house downstairs with her friends. She raked my dad over the coals in their divorce and took everything she could, including the most child support and alimony she could get. She didn't want the headache of having us full-time, so she made sure she got 51% custody so she could get child support. Growing up, my mom didn't really care much for us. Every time I tried to sign up for a sport or a school musical, I would come home to screaming, "How are you going to get to practice?" She would yell at me, "Who's going to drive you? It's sure as fuck not going to be me. You know how tired I am after work." I endured it and signed up anyway, knowing my grandparents would help if needed. But it always hurt knowing my mom just didn't care. A few times she hit me when she got mad enough, but that was rare. A big issue with my mom was when she promised something, she almost always reneged later. "If you do your homework, we can go play at the park," really meant, "Do your homework and then go to your room so I can watch Mari in peace." "If you lose 10 pounds over the summer, I'll pay you $100. When I lost the weight, she said, "Well, you were fat and I had to motivate you somehow, but I'm not paying for you to do what you should have done anyway." And more recently, when I moved out of state and she promised she would fix my car before I left, she didn't, and it nearly broke down on me on the way to my new home. I've gotten used to being disappointed by my mom, and I don't think of her as part of my support system. She's just kind of there. I pay for all my own things and have been working really hard. Recently, I was promoted at my new job in my city after just 6 months with the company, in line for another promotion in a few months. Things were going great. Then my boyfriend and I broke up. We live under the same roof in a 1-bed, 1-bath apartment, and I thought that would be okay while I got things figured out to move, but it's been pretty rough. I wake up some nights to being groped and grabbed in my sleep, or he'll be grinding against me from behind. I sleep on the couch most nights, but I had spinal and shoulder surgery a little over a year ago and can't do that long term. I asked my mom for help moving, just a loan I would pay back. She told me, "I can't help you right now. My husband and I are going through a rough patch." She then texted me, "Gotta go, I'm at the hair salon." My mom is still getting her hair done monthly, still getting her nails done, still getting work done on her brand new Camaro. Her husband just went on an out-of-state vacation. I don't mean to be selfish. I know my mom doesn't have any obligation to help me, but if I knew this was happening to my daughter, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her there. Am I being entitled for thinking of lessening contact over this? So the part that cements this for being not entitled in my eyes is you have every right to ask your parents for a loan, but you cannot expect that loan. Your response wasn't that you felt entitled to that loan or expected it to happen. Your response to it being declined was feeling as though you should just lessen contact, which honestly you should have done in the first place because your mom is nothing but a user. If you had ended this off with saying, like, "I think that after everything we've gone through, she at least owes me this," that would be a different story. Granted, there is a massive argument that your mom owes you a shit ton for the childhood she put you through. But considering she's going through a rough patch and putting a bunch of money into random things while you're pretty much struggling with I don't even know what the fuck you would call your ex at this point if he's groping you in your sleep. That is just incredibly uncomfy and you gotta get out of there ASAP. I don't blame you for wanting help to get out of a desperate situation. But I think your problem is that you're looking for help up the wrong tree. I mean, seriously. Has your mom actually ever been there meaningfully in your life? Has she ever actually done anything for you that you could actually know that you could count on? And why would you think it would change when you're suddenly in danger? Hell, you even know that she's not part of your support system. You probably should have started with that support system instead of going to the one person who you knew since you were a child that you couldn't count on. I don't think OP here is entitled, perhaps just misguided at worst. What do you think? Let me know your opinions in the comments. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code OZ at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code OZ directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Bear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup, and you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code OZ at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.